We haven't talked much about impediments or obstacles, so let's talk about some of the obstacles, including cost, that might slow the adoption and deployment of these capabilities and platforms, particularly to the mass market in the US, as well as other markets outside of the US. So from a chipset and BOM perspective, help us understand where the cost curve is going. Vivek?
I think from a chipset and BOM perspective, the cost curves are going very steeply going down, basically, if you look at it from that perspective. I think the trend is also, every region of the market is very different. Some markets are subsidized, some markets are non-subsidized, for example. And the non-subsidized markets, typically you have to bet a certain cost points to be able to drive these kind of services. From a total BOM perspective, there's a lot of integration happening. And we definitely see that. We talked about earlier feature phone versus smartphone. The whole space is blurring right now, basically. What's a smartphone versus feature phone implementation? But again, what it comes down to, the fact is that to deploy new services and also to deploy services on existing devices, it has to have a certain ingredients of the operating system, certain capabilities to be able to push the services on it. I think Verizon can also comment on that. Because if you don't have that, then it's very difficult to deploy innovative models on the ongoing basis. Otherwise, you do go through the cost curve and the replacement cycles of the devices. And that's a very big burden on the CapEx, basically, from operator's side perspective. In a non-subsidy markets, it's different. In non-subsidy markets, you are still competing on a very service-driven orientation. Today, most of these are very much driven from a subscriber voice services, large part of it. But we see definitely that as certain emerging markets are moving away from going straight from into the PC, skipping the PC revolution, for example, going to pure mobile revolution, they definitely need this kind of services addressing that. And FedEx of the world will also come over there, and they're already coming in the pockets. But when the large conglomerates of systems will happen, it will drive that adoption faster.
You mentioned earlier some innovative pricing plans. So in this country, we're accustomed to subscribing to data plans, whereas in other countries, perhaps being able to buy even location services on a per unit basis. Is Verizon looking at different pricing models that might make location as well as other services available outside of a conventional data plan?
Actually, they do exist today. So the network APIs that we offer, there are tiers of service and pricing for that. So I think for first 1,000 location dips, there is no charge for the developer. So the developer can go out, experiment, use it, and build out their application. And as they go higher and higher into that tier, there is some cost, but it's at a lower level. And then on the handset API side, we don't charge.
Okay.
So the standalone GPS, cell ID-based location, as well as Wi-Fi, there is no charge. The developers can download the SDKs, use them for free. Along with the location, we are also giving away map data for free. So completely customizable content, including maps, traffic, weather, gas prices. So the developers can embed these in their applications as they see fit. And on top of that, add their own value with whatever they bring to the table, and come out with something that is very low cost that they can take out to their developer base. But at some point, as we've seen, it's all either freemium based or a cross subsidy model where people are giving away something and driving users to a paid application, whether it's an advertisement based app that is the free app, and then a paid app which has no advertisements, or it could actually be a quality of service level difference as well. So, but these are the models that exist today, and we are kind of making ourselves very compliant to that, so developers can do what they want.
So everything sounds positive. Other impediments, obstacles that might slow progress, privacy concerns, anything else?
Yeah, I think one of the areas is the business model for enterprise use of location. There's a clear ROI, and so there's a return on investment that they are seeing, and hence they are willing to pay. And so there's a revenue recognition model that's there. It's still not very clear for the mass market consumer how money will be made, right? Everybody seems to be moving towards, okay, it's free and ads will drive it, right? Now, we know that one company is thriving based on ads, and that's Google, but there can't be two Googles. So really, how are all the other companies going to thrive in this ecosystem? That is still, to me, a question.
And that's a question both in the US as well as other markets outside?
I think so, yes.
Okay, all right, very good. Questions from the audience? Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
So one question is, maybe a question for Biren and then others as appropriate, is with all this sort of pinging the network for information on location, what sort of work are you seeing to alleviate how the extent to which it sort of taxes the network on all these sort of location-based applications? Since we're clearly capacity constrained, we're also moving to new business models in terms of how services are being priced, usage pricing or tiered pricing. Is there concern about that? You hear a lot of very different stories from the folks at RIM, Android, and then Apple about the way in which their particular location services on the device work with the network. So I just thought maybe we'd open that up for a couple of comments.
And in addition to that, are there concerns about battery drain as well from the end user standpoint with this pinging as well?
Right. So I think that the concerns with location and its location itself taxing the network and the data pipe, I don't think those are that prevalent. I think the issues we have seen is with just data usage, heavy data usage, continuous data usage. So from our point of view, like I mentioned before, if the location service is implemented in a way that it hits our network elements, then we don't give that away for free. And then that in itself becomes self-limiting, right? So if the developer or the application has some cost associated with it, then they use it very efficiently. Because then they have to pay a bill at the end of the month. And that drives the usage. While we've also developed services where our cost for deploying that service is very low. For example, cell ID-based location on handsets. And so we are able to afford it and give it away for free.
And battery impact of this pinging?
I think that drives to this, if standalone GPS is used on the handset itself and a lot of tracking is going on, that results in a battery drain. But again, the chipsets these days are coming, with GPS extra and predicted orbits. So all those things kind of help with getting the first, fix quickly so that the battery life is maintained.
Okay. There was a question back here. Yes.
Hi, Ivan Sheldon, Navtech, focused on new markets. In the past, digital cameras. Today, indoor, among other things. And so a question for the panel and for anyone else later in the day is, what's the highest value indoor real estate? I've heard use cases on the consumer side around malls. The enterprise hospital story is very interesting, but as a company that's looking for scale and kind of global appeal, what do you all see as the most interesting indoor use cases and indoor venues? Thank you.
It's a good question. We'll open that one up to the audience as well. The ones I'm beginning to see, and then we'll entertain a few others, but Myers Thrifty Acres, if you've ever lived in the Midwest, it's aptly named. It's literally acres. And not only finding where you are, but the merchandise you're shopping for, your spouse or children or whatever you've lost, is likely to be a high-value application. So that's one. Others, I saw a few other hands here. Other high-value applications. Let's see if we can get some insight there first.
Yeah, hi, I'm Adrian Jennings from Ubisense. One of the very high-value applications in an indoor location is in manufacturing. And I think maybe when we think about manufacturing and how amazing advanced the processes are and how lean those processes become, we think of these high-tech environments. It's horrible in there. They lose stuff all the time. They lose wings of aircraft. They lose things bigger than you could possibly imagine. And finding things in manufacturing plants is very critical for process automation and optimization, but it doesn't end there. It gets down to a very granular level, and it gets to matching the right part with the right tool, with the right operator, at the right cell, at the right time. And that's a massive challenge in manufacturing.
So process integration, great application.
Process analytics, process automation, process control, yeah.
Now, as a consumer, I say that things are not lost, they're just temporarily misplaced. So it might even help me, right, with all those things that temporarily misplaced. Was there another example for high value?
I think one of the classic examples is wherever we have high traffic consumers. Typically, there are certain malls which always attract a lot more consumers, and that's clearly an area where mobile advertisement, hyperlocals of Google's will be able to monetize it. So I think any high traffic consumer area, that's where, from a Navtex of the world standpoint, that's where the mapping needs to start. And once you get it there, then people will get used to it and expand it.
Yes.
I have to admit that I'm a little biased. I'm in the global travel industry, so my answer is going to be the global travel industry, particularly the hospitality industry. It was mentioned by the NTT Docomo representative that e-concierge was their most popular application. Therefore, an e-concierge application, particularly that involves merchandising of not only hotel and resort services, but also nearby merchants, it has a lot of opportunity.
And you know, there's image recognition as well, that if you walk up to a kiosk, some of the technologies allow one to determine your gender, age, and a variety of other things and serve up content that's more relevant to you. So I think this filtering of content based on where you are as well as who you are is probably coming. Yes?
One area that I think has a lot of value is places where children tend to congregate. A company I work for, BI Incorporated, that does offender tracking products. The next step for us is going to be indoor spaces where kids are as we're tracking sex offenders.
Good example. Very good.
It's a large area, obviously, but those are going to be needs there.
Okay. Do we have time for a couple more questions? Other questions from the audience? Yes.
I have one question for the panel, especially Vivek. We've talked a lot about location in the developed world, but I know Marvel is involved a lot with China Mobiles and others in the emerging world. So what is the status of every place from a China type of markets?
I think this comes back to what other gentlemen talk about from NAVTEC perspective. I think the coverage is very limited still, if you look at from emerging markets. And yes, we are deploying solutions at the higher end of the scale, but if you look at the low end and the mid end of the scale, it's still non-existent today. So I think there's a lot more market to grow and penetrate in those areas. In certain areas, there is no control plane integration at all, for example. Right, and we definitely see that that's a very big growth area for us, and definitely see that the lower cost of solution is a key penetration criteria to be able to address those markets.
All right, other questions? All right, please join me in thanking the panelists. Great job, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.